Bill married the neighbor he was cheating with, and now they're harassing me to make their triplet daughters the flower girls at my wedding even though I already promised my cousins. Hello, everyone. I, 25F, am getting married to my fiancé, Jackson, 25M, this year in August. When I was 5, I met my husband when I was in the woods near a Catholic church he attended near my house. I found him lost and I guess we just never stopped hanging out since then, and I'm glad for that. Anyways, my husband has 5 siblings. John, 35M. Jessica, 32F. Jacob, 30M, Joy, 27F, and Janice, 15F. For clarification, this story is about my eldest Bill, John. His ex-wife, Grace, 34F, had 2 kids together, Julia, 13F, and Peter, 10M. Well, when I was 16, Grace's parents were tragically killed in the alleyway while walking together for quality time around sunset and were both mugged. I won't get into the details, but the aftermath was devastating. Sure, the killer got life in prison, but Grace was devastated. So devastated that she was placed in the mental ward since she had a horrible mental snap. She was in there for a year when John served her with divorce papers. Why? Well, after only 2 damn months of Grace being in the mental ward, he had started an affair with their single neighbor, Paige, 35F. This only drove Grace further down her spiral and she is still in there to this day, 9 years later. John and Paige rushed to get married, only 6 months after John's divorce was final. I was so angry because I knew how deeply he hurt not only Grace, but Julia and Peter. I've known them both since they were born and always saw them like family. My parents found out and didn't want me visiting them anymore, but I just couldn't because I felt like I'd be leaving them behind. Well, 3 years into their marriage, they got pregnant with 3 triplet girls. After the girls were born, Peter was paid more attention to since he was such a good big brother now. However, Julia was showed to the side. I was pissed because John was basically replacing her with his 3 new girls. Julia spent countless nights with me at my parents' house since I was 19, but my parents allowed me to stay home for college to save money on housing. Needless to say, I never fought for a relationship or tried to talk to John or Paige whenever I visited Julia and Peter, mostly to take them out to get out of that hellhole. Fast forward to 2 years ago, Jackson proposed. It was a sweet moment because it was where we had our first date and it was absolutely magical. We knew we shouldn't get married too early since we were only 23 at the time. I did accept the proposal, but we still needed some time. We announced our engagement when it happened and only friends and family contacted us. Julia and Peter did, but never John or Paige reach out. Now that we're planning to get married this year in August, we started to really delve into planning for the past few months. One day, I was reviewing the venue for the color scheme me and Jackson wanted with my mom when my phone rang. I didn't pick it up at first because it was in the kitchen while I was in the living room, so couldn't reach it in time. However, when it rang again, I was surprised to see it was Paige. When I picked up, she made small talk. I play along until the topic of the wedding came up. She then asked about who the flower girl would be and she soon asked if her 3 triplet girls, 6F, could fill the roles. Despite them being pretty old, 2 younger cousins of mine have always wanted to be the flower girls and I promised them that they could when I first announced my engagement. I didn't plan to break that promise and I told Paige that I couldn't do that since I made my promise to my cousins already. Paige immediately berated me and long story short, she hung up super pissed. Later that night, Jackson and I were in bed when I told him what happened. Jackson said not to worry about it since she can't do anything about it since she had her wedding already and this is ours. I nodded and smiled and we left it at that. Now for the past month, I've been getting bombarded on Facebook and basically all social media and my phone number by Paige, John, and their friends and family for me not giving them what their daughters wanted. Especially Jessica, eldest sister in their family. I wasn't surprised because when I was 16, she got pregnant with her sister's boyfriend and they got married when their affair daughter was a year old. May make a separate post regarding that shit show. But with all the harassment I'm getting, I'm starting to think I may be the a-hole. Besides, I want my wedding day to make sure everyone is in good spirits and go into my marriage with a good head. So I just wanted to come here and ask Ida for not letting my eldest Bill's triplet daughters be my 3 flower girls. Edit, I think I should also add some vital info. So first off, John is a corporate lawyer with a lot of connections, so I'm not sure if threatening him to leave me alone or anything like that would help like someone mentioned. Also, I saw and replied to a comment that implied I had a grudge against the triplets. I'll add it here and say I don't have anything against the triplets. It's ridiculous to blame them for existing when they didn't ask for it, nor ask for such horrible people for parents. I'm also seeing blocking on FB and social media. I've done that and I'm considering changing my number, but I have to get some affairs in order before I can. mostly letting family members and trustworthy friends know. Also, my parents know about this and are trying to help best they can. I've also alerted my future in-laws about this and they said they'd talk to John and Paige. One thing to also mention is that my in-laws cut John off after what he did to Grace, but re-established contact when the triplets were born. Understandable, since at the end of the day, they are their grandchildren despite what their parents have done. Update 1. First of all, I'd like to thank you for all the messages and comments on the last post. I never thought this would get a lot of attention, let alone a small amount of it. So just to update you all, I followed much advice and I have blocked many of John and Paige's family that were blasting me. Also, I have seen that Jackson should stick up to his brother. He has done that. However, John simply doesn't listen to anyone, could be because he finds himself entitled not to for being the eldest sibling or being a lawyer, not sure, but my future in-laws did talk to him and threatened him for me that he won't be allowed into the wedding. While that was a bit invasive of them to make that threat without my acknowledgement, I'm glad they did, since John would more likely listen to them than to me. But that's not entirely what this update is about. As I mentioned in my previous post, I mentioned that I picked up Julia to get away from her toxic household. Well, last time I was there, last night so we could go night driving, John's triplet girls, who are all 6, rushed up to me and told me they were so excited to be a huge play in the wedding. I was confused and immediately realized that Paige wouldn't look at me. I didn't want to confront her and gently tried to tell the girls that while I appreciate their enthusiasm, I already had flower girls in mind. It took a couple of minutes and surprisingly, they took it well. I was confused but decided to leave it at that. I took Julia and we had a nice drive. We went to the park and we just hung out and talked on a bench. I asked her pretty bluntly and not really expecting an answer if the triplets ever really wanted to be a part of the wedding. This was a surprise to Julia because she knew I was getting married, but didn't really think the triplets wanted to be a big part, nor have they talked about it to her or Peter. I was even more confused and decided to try and talk to John when I saw him. When I dropped Julia off, I tried to talk to John, but Paige said to me to pee is off. Like what? What did I do? When I got home, I waited for Jackson to be in bed. It's our safe space to always talk. I didn't want to talk to my parents since they're both busy and stressed with house renovations and my grandma's heart health, so didn't want to put them under more pressure. When I told Jackson, he said that he too was contacted by John during the time I was out with Julia that I needed to do this. The crazy thing is, neither of us even know why. Jackson said that he'd again tell his parents to deal with it. This morning, I woke up and decided to call out of work to just have a mental day to myself, and I just got back from walking around the mall and getting coffee. I got some plushies I found cute to decorate the bed. Anyways, no word yet, so I'm just gonna try and get as much mental breaks when I can when I'm not worried about this, work, and the wedding and some family issues aside from this. I'll update when I get any clarification on why so badly John and Paige want their daughters to be in the wedding so badly. Update 2. Hi, again. Before going into the update, I do want to address something. I saw a comment saying my fiancé needs to stick up for me and confront John on his own. While I do agree that Jackson should stick up for me, John just won't listen to any of his siblings that don't agree with him, no matter how wrong he is. The only reason my future Mill and Phil can get to him is most likely because they're his parents and now how to get him to listen better. I don't know and really don't care to know. All that matters is that they can get through to him. Now for the update. So just last night, I got the whole story. I won't dive into it, but to the people who said Paige was using the girls as a way to be accepted into the family, congratulations. You win the grand prize for being absolutely correct. Paige and John also said it wasn't fair that only Julia was getting to be a bridesmaid. She is, by the way, in case some people were hoping she would be, while their triplets don't have any significant role. Well, again, I have a much better connection with Julia and Peter than I do the triplet girls. So yeah. Guess who is fully blocked and uninvited from the wedding? Also, just this morning, Jackson himself told them they were uninvited before blocking them on both his and my devices since I was still asleep and he goes to work before me. I also had to block Jessica, might make a full story on her and why she's also basically estranged, because she was berating me and calling me callous and cruel for punishing 3 little girls. I just blocked her since after reading countless comments, I know I'm not the a-hole and that talking to her won't do any good for me. So, blocked too. I'm also following some advice and will look into extra security personnel for the wedding so John and Paige don't try to come. I don't know why it took internet strangers to tell me to block them to finally go through with, but glad I did since I guess just my older brother telling me wasn't really working. Anyways, thank you all so much for advice and your comments and I'll be sure to update after the wedding. Update 3. Hello all. This isn't the biggest update. So, my fiancé is no longer my fiancé. He is now my husband. We got married just yesterday and now we're in our new home planning to go to our honeymoon next week. The wedding itself went wonderful. I didn't find out anything about John, Paige, even about Jessica and Tim, my issues with them on my profile. Thankfully, I follow your guys' great advice of giving the security a password to ensure they can't come in. Also, I was able to get Julia and Peter to the wedding thanks to the help of my now Mill and Phil. Love to be able to see all them that. Julia was a bridesmaid and we let Peter help with the music since he is pretty tech savvy. Don't know if I said that in one of my last updates. Haha, I also finally got into contact with Grace. Yay, I haven't been able to do that with all the wedding prep and the family drama, so it was nice to talk to her. I asked her if she wished to attend, but she said she didn't know if she was ready to come into the outside world, but would love videos and photos. I was sad, but understood where she was coming from since she was in the mental institution she is at right now for nearly 10 years at this point. I also want to help her get parental rights over Julia and Peter since the kids deserve their mother in their life, their real mother who actually care about them and not just for appearances. She is on board and now got this in my hands. Also, people who are wondering about if John and Paige tried to intervene, they did, but as I said, security did wonderful to keep them out. But when me and Jackson were now in our marital bed, I got a text from a different number and realized I was in a group chat now between John, Paige, Jessica, and Tim. I didn't bother to read any of the messages, but then saw a couple that had Jessica exploiting secret things I told her growing up since we were close. I blocked them all again, but was upset since she was talking about bad ancestors, bad live family members, mistakes I made, etc. I thought I'd be super pissed, but I was just indifferent when I saw the message since I don't really care about those things anymore. Anyways, that's the update for now. Don't know if I'll update again, I might since this whole wedding might lead to bigger family drama. But in case I don't, thank you all for listening to my rant and giving me advice on this matter. Edit, hey y'all. Just a small edit, but we just arrived in Brussels. We'll be here for about 2 weeks. We plan to spend the first week and a half together and spend the last few days with Jackson's mom's side of the family the last few days. I'll have my notifications off except messages and whatnot and we'll be back during the nighttime hours when I can and not too tired. Update 4, hey, guys. It's been a while since I last posted here. Just a quick sum up of what's been going on lately. Grace is being reevaluated for her medications and treatment with the possibility of being released and Phil managed to find a great lawyer for her to rearrange the custody. But that's however, is not what this update is about. Back 2 weeks ago, me and Jackson were in my parents' house while they took my grandma out of state to see my mom's younger brother and his family. While I was cooking and Jackson was in the living room trying to fix something with the TV, that's when the doorbell rang. I looked through the cameras. I saw it was Paige. Jackson went to the door and slightly opens it with the chain on. Paige was screaming and crying, asking if we were happy her life was falling apart. Despite my better judgment, we brought her into the house since I didn't want her to make a scene for any neighbors to see. I sat her down and tried to relax her a bit with some water. She downed half the bottle before she wiped her eyes. I was angry because why did she have the audacity to do this? Come to my parents' property to talk to us? Paige soon told us why she was there. She told us that after our wedding, she and John had a huge fight where so many things were said. Paige was told that she was the biggest mistake in John's life, how he hated her and wished she was never his neighbor, etc. She said he also regretted having their 3 girls since that seemed to also damage his relationship with Julia and Peter. Despite what I have said on here, John really was a good dad to them until he forced them all to be one big family with his new kids while also pushing Julia to the side? That didn't make any sense to me. She said John told her she was the reason why he was so estranged from his family and whatnot. She also confessed that this has always been the case. John would verbally abuse her ever since they got married and only had kids with her, hoping that would soften his family to him again. I was baffled and so was Jackson. I now had a guess that Paige was only the way she was because of the abuse she suffered by John. There was a lot more said, but Jackson ended up suggesting some therapists to her since she clearly had a lot to figure out. That's why I love Jackson so much. Despite this woman doing so much to us, he still was willing to help her. Paige then left, her daughters were being left under the care of Julia and Peter. I don't know what's going to happen now. But one thing I know for sure is that I want Paige to get out of that marriage. Not just for her, but for the triplets since they are innocent in all of this and they're just 6. I am also hoping that Julia and Peter are taken away from John's care whether or not he is abusing them or not because for all we know, he's seriously sick in the head. Edit to make, I want to confirm that I don't 100% trust Paige on this. So I am taking what she said at face value. However, not really at the same time because if what she is saying turns out to be true, I want her to get the life out this situation any way that I can. Update 5, so, It's been another 2 months since my last update and things have gotten interesting. I found out from my Phil that Paige was actually being verbally abused by John. However, she's not any better. How does my Phil know this? The triplets tell him in a fashion that's like Mama and Papa always yell mean things at each other. So that's enough proof for that. But I highly doubt they're going to get divorced since they want to put on a strong front for everyone, despite them being known for cheaters. On a positive note, Grace has been cleared to leave the mental hospital. She's been staying with Joy, my Sil, and her husband while Grace gets back in her feet and gets used to normal life. Julia and Peter met her at my in-laws' house. It was super emotional from what I have been told by my husband, who was there. Before people ask why they were allowed to see Grace, my in-laws do have John's permission to take them sometimes like I do. 2 nights ago I went to go see Grace and she looks better than ever. She is at a healthy weight, she was very skinny before, and looks a lot more happy than she has been in a while. The custody reevaluation has started just 3 weeks ago, so that's still ongoing so that Grace can have custody with the kids. Me and my husband are also doing well. He started to be more involved with the kids now that he is taking a semester off from medical school to be with the family more. This is the reason why he wasn't as involved as I was, because he was busy with medical school. So, not the most eventful update, but hopefully things will get better. I will update when the custody agreement has been finalized. Toxic parents and sister cancelled my 18th birthday behind my back, then kicked me out over dirty dishes. They got a taste of karma as they forgot to uninvite this special guest. Hi, people of Reddit. I am Whitney, 18F, and my bully parents are finally getting justice for what they did and I'm happy about it. To give you a little backstory, let me tell you about my mom, Eleanor, 48F, and dad, Max, 51M. My parents are kind of bullies, and they have always favored my golden child sister, Elsa, 21F. I've spent most of my life feeling like a second-class citizen in my own home. I'm not going to lie, it's been really tough, and I've reached a point where I need to vent. So, growing up, I was the one who could never do anything right. When I was 16, I decided to take up painting. It was a hobby I was really passionate about. I spent hours working on a piece for a local art competition. When I finally completed it, I was super proud and couldn't wait to show my parents. But instead of being supportive, my mom took one look at it and said, "Well, it's not exactly a masterpiece, is it?" And proceeded to show it to Elsa, who gave a half-hearted compliment and then went back to her homework. I felt crushed. My dad didn't even bother to look at it, he was too busy watching Elsa's new dance video. One of the worst instances was when I was 15 and had my first serious boyfriend. I was really excited about it and wanted to introduce him to my family. I was so nervous, but I thought it would be a big step in feeling more connected with them. Instead, my mom and dad barely acknowledged him. They just made snide comments about how he didn't seem like the type of guy they'd expect me to date. My mom even went so far as to make a joke about how he seemed like he was from the wrong side of the tracks. I was mortified. They never made an effort to get to know him or make me feel supported in my own relationship. And then there was the time I had a really bad bout of the flu. I was bedridden for days, feeling absolutely miserable. My parents didn't even bother to check in on me. They were too busy with Elsa's rehearsal for the play. I remember laying in bed, hearing them discussing her costume and schedule, and feeling completely abandoned. When Elsa came home, she just gave me a patronizing smile and said, "I hope you're feeling better now," before heading off to hang out with her friends. The worst part is that Elsa never really appreciated me or valued me either. I'd try to have conversations with her, and share things about my life, and it felt like she was always too busy or too disinterested. I only confided in her about how hurt I felt from all this favoritism, and she just shrugged it off, saying, "You're just being dramatic. Mom and Dad love us both." But it's like, if they really did love us both, why was I always treated as an afterthought? I even tried to bond with her over shared interests, like books and movies, but she was always more interested in talking about herself or her friends. For example, she'd come home from a weekend trip with her friends, and instead of asking me about my week or how I was doing, she'd just go on and on about her latest adventures and how amazing her friends were. It always felt like I was just a backdrop to her life, a mere spectator in her grand narrative. I could go on and on about the countless little instances where I felt neglected or undervalued. It's been a lifetime of living in Elsa's shadow, of feeling like the backup plan or the afterthought. And the hardest part is that my parents never see it. They think they're being fair, that they love us both equally, but it's so clear to me that their love for Elsa is just on a whole different level. Sometimes, I wonder if it's something wrong with me, if I'm just not worthy of their attention and affection. But then I think about all the things I've done, all the ways I've tried to prove myself, and it's like no matter how hard I try, it's never enough. I've even tried to talk to my parents about it, but they just dismiss me or tell me I'm being overly sensitive. They say things like, "You're imagining things," or Elsa's achievements are just more visible, but it doesn't make the sting any less painful. So, 2 days ago was my 18th birthday. For context, Elsa and my birthday are just 1 day apart, so you can imagine how our family celebrations typically go. Growing up, I've always had this sinking feeling that my birthday was just overshadowed by Elsa's, but this year, I decided to keep things simple. I knew better than to expect a big celebration at this point. I've pretty much stopped dreaming about anything extravagant. So, I told my parents that all I wanted was a quiet dinner at a nice restaurant with just a few of my friends and family. Honestly, I figured it was a modest request, given everything. I was really excited about this birthday. Turning 18 felt like a huge milestone. I mean, it's the age where you finally get to say, I'm legally an adult. And all that. I was looking forward to it as a way to celebrate a bit of independence and mark the end of my teenage years. I had picked out this gorgeous dress that I had been eyeing for months. It was this sleek, navy blue number with a bit of sparkle that made me feel like I was finally stepping into my own. I even went out of my way to find a restaurant that I thought everyone would enjoy. After doing some research, I settled on a place that had great reviews and a cozy atmosphere. I thought it would be perfect for a low-key birthday dinner. I went to the trouble of searching for the best restaurant, making sure it was somewhere everyone could agree on. I didn't want any last-minute stress or arguments over where to eat. I wanted the night to be as smooth and enjoyable as possible. So, I found this cute little bistro that served a variety of dishes and had a good mix of vegetarian and non-vegetarian options. I even called ahead to make sure they had a table for us, just to be on the safe side. When I finally had everything planned out, I was really looking forward to the evening. I felt like I had done everything right and that this was going to be a special moment. I let my mom know about the restaurant and the time I thought would work best. I said I'd like to start the dinner around 7 p.m., and she agreed. She even said she'd make sure everyone would be there on time. I was so relieved that at least one part of this whole process seemed to be coming together smoothly. In the days leading up to my birthday, I was buzzing with excitement. I got everything ready: the dress, the shoes, and even a little bit of makeup. I wanted to feel good and look my best for the occasion. I was hoping that this year, despite the usual overshadowing, I could actually enjoy my birthday for once. It was a small, personal celebration, but that's exactly what I wanted. No big parties, no extravagant decorations, just a nice, intimate dinner with people I care about. I thought this would be a chance for my family to show a little appreciation for me too. It felt like a reasonable expectation given how little I had asked for. I reached the restaurant at 6:45 and waited outside for 15 minutes because I didn't want to go in early and seem too eager. I figured it'd be polite to give everyone a little leeway to arrive, especially since it was my special day. I wanted to make sure everything was perfect, so I decided to stick to the plan and wait until 7 p.m. before going in. When I finally walked inside at 7, hoping to see everyone gathered and ready to celebrate, it was like walking into an empty theater. I was the only one there. The reservation was still on the books, so that was a relief, but the hostess gave me a look of surprise when she saw me standing alone. She kindly led me to my table, which, of course, was beautifully set and ready, but it felt more like a stage for a solo performance than a cozy dinner with friends and family. The waiter came over almost immediately and asked if I'd like to order something while I waited. I was feeling a bit awkward and didn't want to start eating or drinking alone, so I told him no, that I'd prefer to wait for the rest of my party. He seemed understanding, though I could tell he was a little puzzled by the fact that no one else had arrived. I hoped it was just a matter of a few minutes delay, maybe some last-minute traffic or people running late. As I sat there, I tried to stay optimistic. I checked my phone a couple of times to see if I had missed any messages. Maybe someone was stuck in traffic or there was a mix-up with the timing. I kept looking toward the entrance, hoping to see familiar faces walk through the door. The restaurant was starting to fill up with other patrons, and I felt increasingly self-conscious sitting there alone, wearing my special dress, with no one to share it with. The minutes dragged on, and I was beginning to feel a knot in my stomach. My excitement from earlier in the day was starting to give way to a mix of anxiety and disappointment. I tried to keep my mind off it by scrolling through my phone or fiddling with my menu, but the reality was starting to sink in. It was past 7:15, and still no sign of anyone. At that point, I began to worry. I didn't want to make a scene or call anyone out, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was seriously off. I tried to convince myself that maybe everyone was just running exceptionally late, but the minutes kept ticking by with no change. My hopes were dwindling, and I was feeling more and more isolated. By 7:30, I couldn't deny it any longer. It was clear that my family and friends hadn't shown up yet. I started to get a bit emotional, sitting there at my table, feeling like I was the only one who had shown up to their own birthday party. I began to think back on how I had made sure everything was arranged and planned, how I'd been excited and looking forward to this night, only to end up waiting alone. I kept telling myself to stay calm and composed, but it was getting harder with each passing minute. When no one showed up after 30 minutes, I started to get really anxious. I decided to call my parents, thinking maybe they were just running late. I called them repeatedly, but no one answered. My heart was racing, and I felt this sinking feeling in my stomach. I knew I needed to figure out what was going on, so I decided to call Elsa, hoping she might have some answers. She picked up on the second ring, and I tried to keep my voice calm, even though I was on the verge of panic. I asked her where everyone was, and she casually mentioned that she was at home. I was completely baffled. I asked her when she was planning to come to the restaurant, and that's when she dropped the bombshell. She said, "Oh, I forgot to tell you, but we had to cancel the party. Mom wasn't feeling well." I was in disbelief. I asked her why no one had told me about the cancellation. I thought maybe there was some sort of miscommunication or a mix-up. Elsa's response was shockingly nonchalant. She said, "I'm sorry, I guess I forgot to let you know." It felt like a punch to the gut. Here I was, dressed up, waiting at the restaurant, and they hadn't even bothered to give me a heads up. I tried to process what she was saying. I asked her if there was any chance they could still make it if Mom was okay, or if there was some way to salvage the evening. But Elsa's response was cold and dismissive. She said, "I really have to go now," and then she just hung up on me. I was left sitting there, stunned and hurt. I tried to keep my composure, but it was really tough. I felt like I had put so much effort into planning this evening and had gotten nothing in return. I looked around the restaurant, trying to keep my tears at bay, and I could see families and groups of friends enjoying their meals. It made me feel even more isolated. I was sitting there with no one to talk to, no one to celebrate with. The emptiness of the situation was overwhelming. I was sitting there feeling pretty miserable, so I decided to order something to eat. I told the waiter that no one was coming and asked if I could move to a smaller table. At this point, I was just trying to make the best of a bad situation. I ordered a simple meal, not really caring much about what I ate, and pulled out my phone to pass the time. As I was scrolling through my feed, trying to distract myself from the growing sadness, I noticed someone walking through the restaurant's entrance. I looked up, and to my shock, it was my grandfather. I hadn't expected him to come, especially since I thought my mom had uninvited everyone. I was genuinely surprised and, honestly, relieved to see a familiar face. He walked over with a warm smile and said, "Happy birthday." I felt a rush of emotion as he came closer. I stood up and gave him a big hug. It was one of those hugs that you need when everything else feels like it's falling apart. I thanked him for coming, and it felt like a small glimmer of hope in an otherwise bleak evening. He looked around and asked me where everyone else was. Up until that moment, I had been holding back tears, trying to keep it together. But when he asked that simple question, it was like a dam breaking open. I couldn't hold it in any longer. I started crying, right there in the middle of the restaurant. My face flushed, and I could feel the tears streaming down. I took a deep breath and tried to explain what had happened. Between sobs, I told him about how I had arrived early, how no one had shown up, and how Elsa had called to tell me that the party was cancelled because Mom wasn't feeling well. I told him how I had been sitting alone, feeling completely abandoned and forgotten on what was supposed to be my special day. My grandfather listened patiently, and I could see the concern in his eyes. He put a comforting hand on my shoulder and told me he was so sorry. He said he didn't know about the cancellation and that he had come as soon as he could. It was clear he felt bad about the situation, and his presence was a much-needed comfort. We chatted as we waited for my food to arrive. He shared some stories from his day and made a few jokes to lift my spirits. It wasn't the lively birthday dinner I had imagined, but his company made it feel a bit more like a celebration. As we talked, I felt a sense of relief. Even though my family had let me down, at least I wasn't completely alone. When the food finally arrived, it was hard to fully enjoy it. The earlier events had left a bitter taste, and I found myself picking at my plate more out of habit than hunger. My grandfather, ever the trooper, made sure to keep the conversation light and engaging. He kept me company and made the best of the situation. My grandfather drove me home, and I was still feeling pretty raw from the evening. When we arrived, I just wanted to crawl into my room and shut out the world. I didn't say anything to my parents, I just went straight to my room and closed the door behind me. I was hoping for some peace and quiet after the emotional roller coaster of the night. A few minutes later, though, I was jolted from my thoughts by the sounds of screaming coming from the living room. I was a bit startled and worried, so I decided to go downstairs to see what was going on. As I made my way down the stairs, the shouting got louder and more intense. When I reached the bottom, I saw my grandfather and my mom in a heated argument. My mom was yelling, asking my grandfather how he could do this to them. Her voice was full of anger and disbelief. I was completely confused. I had no idea what they were fighting about. I stood there, trying to make sense of the situation, and it was clear that this was more than just a simple family squabble. From what I could gather, the argument was about something that had to do with my grandfather's will. Apparently, my grandfather had promised my mom that he would leave her his house in his will, but now he had decided to change his mind. My grandfather was furious, saying that my mom was still the same entitled brat she had been when she lived with him. He was clearly upset and ashamed of how she had treated me, his own granddaughter. In the middle of the shouting match, my grandfather turned to me, took a deep breath, said, "Happy birthday, sweetie," and then headed for the door. It was a strange moment, filled with mixed emotions. I felt a bit of comfort from his kind words, but the chaos that had unfolded was overwhelming. He left without another word, and I was left standing there, trying to process everything. Once he was gone, my mom turned to me with an intense look. She demanded to know what I had told him. I was caught off guard by the question, but I tried to stay calm. I simply said, "Nothing, just the truth." It was the truth after all about how I had been left alone on my birthday and how Elsa had casually mentioned that the party was cancelled without informing me properly. My mom's face contorted with anger, but before she could say anything else, I just turned and walked back to my room. I closed the door behind me and leaned against it, feeling a mix of exhaustion and frustration. I had hoped for a quiet end to a difficult day, but it seemed like the night was far from over. Eventually, I lay down on my bed, trying to calm my racing thoughts. I felt emotionally drained and wished I could just fast forward through the rest of the night. The arguing had left me feeling even more isolated, and I couldn't shake the sense that I was caught in the middle of something much larger than myself. The evening had not gone at all as I had planned, and I was left wondering if things would ever change or if this was just how things would always be. As I closed my eyes, I hoped for some semblance of peace and a better start to the next day. When I woke up the next day, I felt like I was in a completely different world. The entire atmosphere in the house was icy and uncomfortable. My family was treating me with this cold distance that made me feel like I was invisible. It was a stark contrast to the usual chaos and warmth of family interactions. I walked downstairs and immediately noticed that things were already set up for Elsa's birthday. It was like a complete switch had been flipped overnight. My mom was bustling around the kitchen, clearly feeling better, and she was cooking up a storm. The house was filled with the smells of what I could only guess were preparations for a big birthday celebration. I felt a pang of sadness and frustration as I realized how different things were from the night before. I tried to keep my emotions in check, but it was really hard to see the celebration for Elsa being planned so meticulously while my own birthday had been so disregarded. I was still feeling the sting of being abandoned and hurt by the lack of consideration for my family. I couldn't just sit there and watch them prepare for Elsa's party when it felt like they had completely ignored my feelings and my birthday. So, I decided to leave. I packed a few things and went over to my best friend's house for the night. I needed a break from the tension and the cold atmosphere at home. I needed somewhere to go where I felt welcomed and understood. My best friend's place was a sanctuary where I knew I could at least feel a little bit of normalcy and comfort. It was an impromptu decision, but it felt like the right one at that moment. The weird part was, that even after I left, my mom didn't even bother to call me. There was no text, no call asking me to come back for Elsa's birthday. It was like my absence didn't matter to them at all. That was a huge blow to my already bruised feelings. It made me wonder if they really didn't want me there or if they just didn't care enough to make an effort to reach out. So now, I'm sitting here at my best friend's house, writing this post, trying to make sense of everything that's happened. I'm feeling a mix of anger and sadness that's been hard to shake off. It's frustrating to feel so disregarded by the people who are supposed to be closest to me. I'm trying to figure out how to deal with these emotions and how to move forward. I'm reaching out because I need advice. How do I cope with feeling this way? How do I stop being so angry and sad about what's happened? I want to find a way to heal from this and not let it consume me. Any advice or words of encouragement would really mean a lot right now. Thanks for listening to my story. Update 1. Hi everyone. I've got quite the update for you. I've been kicked out of my house. Yeah, it sounds as dramatic as it feels. It's only a few weeks until I'm supposed to head off to college, but apparently, my parents couldn't wait that long. The craziest part? It all started over me not doing the dishes. So, here's how it went down. I hadn't gotten around to doing the dishes one night, and my mom completely lost it. She started railing at me about how ungrateful and entitled I am, how I never help around the house and all that jazz. It felt like she was blowing it way out of proportion. I tried to explain that I had been really busy with preparations for college, and it was just one night. But instead of calming down, she just got angrier. Well, I lost my patience too. I snapped back and told her exactly how I felt about the way they've treated me over the years, how I've always been the one overlooked, how my birthday was just another example of their disregard. I aired out everything I'd been bottling up for years, and once it was out, I couldn't hold back. I told her about the emotional distance, the favoritism toward Elsa, and how hurt I felt about everything. As you can imagine, that didn't go over well. Things got really heated. My mom's face turned bright red, and she screamed at me to get out. I was stunned but not surprised. I'd seen this coming for a while now, though I didn't expect it to be triggered by something as mundane as the dishes. I didn't wait around for any more drama. I grabbed a bag, threw in a few essentials, and just left. I didn't even bother with a big goodbye or explanation. I was too upset and needed to get out of there before things got even worse. I told my mom I'd come back for my stuff when I was heading to college, but for now, I needed to be somewhere else. I went straight to my best friend's house. I called her up on the way, hoping she wouldn't mind me crashing there for a bit. Luckily, she was totally understanding and told me I could stay as long as I needed. Her place has been a haven for me ever since. I don't know what to do now. Update 2. Hi everyone. I know it's only been a few weeks since my last update, but I figured I should let you all know what's been happening. Honestly, things have been pretty quiet on my end, but there's a bit of news that might interest you. So, yesterday, I finally got a chance to talk to my grandfather. After the whole drama of being kicked out and everything, I felt like I needed to let him in on what was going on. I called him up and filled him in on the whole messy situation, how I got kicked out over not doing the dishes, the fight with my mom, and the fallout with my family. His reaction was intense, to say the least. He was absolutely furious when he heard what had happened. He couldn't believe that things had escalated to that point over something as trivial as dishes. But more than that, he was upset that I hadn't reached out to him sooner. He said he would have been more than willing to help me out if I had called him earlier. It was a mix of relief and frustration hearing that. Relief because he was willing to help, but frustration at the timing of everything. We ended up having a pretty long conversation about what had happened and how I was feeling. It was really comforting to have someone who understood my side of the story and who was willing to step up and support me. He reassured me that he was on my side and that I shouldn't feel like I had to go through this alone. It felt good to know that there was at least one person in my family who was genuinely supportive. My grandfather has decided to come over the day after tomorrow to help me get my stuff from my parents' house. It's a huge relief to know that I won't have to deal with this by myself. He's going to help me pack up everything I need for college and get it all sorted out. I'm honestly a bit nervous about going back to the house and facing my parents again, but having my grandfather there makes me feel a lot more confident. Update 3, hi everyone. So, I've got another update for you, and unfortunately, it's a pretty rough one. Yesterday was supposed to be the day when I finally got my stuff from my parents' house with the help of my grandfather. However, things took a really terrible turn. When we arrived at my parents' house, I was shocked to find that almost all of my belongings were gone. It turned out that they had either thrown away or donated pretty much everything. All that was left were a few old notebooks. I couldn't believe my eyes. It felt like a total violation of my personal space and belongings. I was at a loss for words. Naturally, I confronted my parents about it. I asked them what had happened to my stuff and if they knew where it all went. Their reaction was to laugh at me. They actually laughed. It was like they found my distress amusing. I was stunned and heartbroken. It was like a final slap in the face, and I couldn't hold back my tears. My grandfather was absolutely furious when he saw how they treated me. His face was red with anger, and I could tell he wanted to confront them more aggressively, but he kept his cool. Instead of getting into a big argument, he decided it was best to just leave. It wasn't worth escalating the situation further, especially since I was already in such a fragile state. We got back into the car, and that's when the tears really started to flow. I was crying pretty hard, feeling utterly defeated and emotionally drained. My grandfather, being the incredible support that he is, did his best to comfort me. He told me he was so sorry that things had turned out this way and that he wished he could have done more. He reassured me that I wasn't alone and that we would figure this out together. To lift my spirits and make sure I had what I needed for college, my grandfather took me shopping. It was a bit surreal walking through stores picking out things I needed for the next chapter of my life while still feeling the sting of what had happened. But his kindness and determination to help me get back on my feet really meant a lot. We managed to pick up a few essentials, and it was a relief to know that I had the basics covered. On top of that, my best friend told me I could have whatever I wanted from her stuff. She offered me clothes, supplies, and anything else I might need. It was a huge comfort to know that even though I was going through such a tough time, I had people who genuinely cared and wanted to support me. Nearly lost a testicle while my girlfriend ignored my calls for help, laughed at my pain, and blocked me to keep clubbing. Now she's begging for another chance. I, 22M, and my girlfriend, 22F, have been together for 5 years. We've been together since high school, and until recently, I've always considered her to be my future wife. I've even bought a ring and was planning on proposing over the coming months. Well, last weekend it was my girlfriend's best friend's birthday. She and her friends booked a private lounge at a club. Obviously, I didn't go since 1. I wasn't invited and 2. I hate clubbing or anything associated with that. I was actually looking forward to spending an evening alone and just binging Netflix or something. Well, my GF left around 9 p.m., and I just crashed on the couch and watched some YouTube. Well, around 11 p.m., I started to feel this distinct stomach pain. The same pain you experience when someone hits you in the nuts. It wasn't bad at first, and I just thought my body was playing some tricks on me, but in the span of about 5 minutes, the pain just kept getting worse until I was basically stuck in the fetal position on the couch. Again, initially, I just thought the pain would go, but then I pulled down my pants, and it felt like my right testicle was starting to swell. The moment I tried to get up and grab my phone to inspect whatever the fuck was happening to me, I just collapsed to the floor. That was probably the worst pain I've ever felt in my life. Imagine being pelted in the nuts over and over again. I did manage to crawl to the table next to the couch to get my phone. I immediately tried calling my GF, but she declined my call. I then texted her that something was wrong and she could come home immediately. The club she went to is like a 5-minute walk from our apartment. I just put the phone down and started throwing up because of the pain. After throwing up for like a minute, it felt like the pain started to cool down a bit, and I grabbed my phone again, and that's when I saw her response. She just replied with a "what is it?" I tried calling her again, but as expected, she just declined again. I then texted her that I need to go to the hospital now. She then asked for what, and I just replied with "my balls hurt." I then just dialed for emergency services. I explained my situation to the emergency responder, and she asked if there was somebody that could drive me to the hospital, and I stupidly said yes. I thought my GF would be home soon, and she would drive me to the hospital. I felt embarrassed to call an ambulance because my balls hurt. After I told the emergency responder this, she then told me that she would call me again in 10 minutes to make sure I was being driven to the hospital. I then put down the phone and went back to vomiting on our carpet. Again, after the pain went away for a bit, I checked my phone and saw that my GF just responded with laughing emojis. I again tried to call her, but as expected, she just declined again. She texted me that this wasn't the time to play games, and she then told me that if I texted or called her again, she would block my number. I again tried calling her, but she declined again, and when I tried calling her a second time, I realized she actually blocked me. I went back to curling up on the floor, and now I started shivering. At this point, I didn't care about being embarrassed and just called emergency services again and asked for an ambulance. It felt like an eternity, but the ambulance eventually came and rushed me to the hospital. I don't remember much of surgery since I was sedated, but I remember waking up eventually, and my right testicle was being stitched together. The doctor informed me that I had a testicular torsion, and I was extremely lucky to reach the hospital in time. I could have easily been forced to surgically remove my testicle. I checked my phone and saw the missed calls and messages my GF left me. In summary, she came home from clubbing and smelled the vomit in our apartment. When she saw the vomit on our carpet, she got mad and tried searching the apartment to find me. When she realized I wasn't there, only then did it hit her that I was actually being serious. I just texted her in which hospital I was staying in and my room number, then went to sleep. I woke up the next morning and saw my GF sleeping on a couch next to my bed. After she woke up, she started bombarding me with apologies. She thought I was joking, that I was trying to ruin their night, etc. I didn't have the energy to argue, so I just kept quiet. I was beyond hurt by what she did, and I wanted to break up with her then and there. Why the fuck would somebody ignore messages where their partner is begging them to come home? Not only that, she stayed in the club until 3 a.m. and didn't even consider going home to check on me. She did stay with me in the hospital for the remaining 2 days I was admitted there and did take good care of me, but I was still beyond pissed at her. Ever since coming home yesterday, I've been wanting to dump her, but at the same time, I feel like she genuinely thought I was joking and made a mistake. I feel conflicted and don't know how to proceed in this situation. Wibta, if I dumped her? Am I overreacting? How would you guys navigate this mess? Edit, just to clarify. No, I never had an issue with her going out in the first place or have ever pulled pranks for her to come home from a night out. And BTW, thank you guys so much for the support. I'm beyond blown away. Comments, Poncho_2504. This is a weird one. If someone texts me telling me they need to go to the hospital because their balls hurt, I'd think they were out of their mind. If they text me telling me they're in excruciating pain, vomiting on the floor and feeling like their balls are being repeatedly ripped from their body, I'd be there in minutes. Local record 7707, NTA. Not walking a total 10 minutes to check on your so after your texts is nuts unless you've cried wolf before. Edit, I'm not insinuating it was a recurring event. I don't condone drunk driving. Walking to check on op was what I said and meant. Sad_wind8580, even if she thought you were joking, you deserved a phone call. Your partner should be worried about you versus why are you ruining my night? Have you ever done this before? She could have called to confirm something was or was not wrong when you said hospital. I would really consider if you went to continue this relationship. She prioritized partying over a phone call, heard hospital and still blocked you, and was planning on yelling about the vomiting. I wish you well in your healing. Low beams, former paramedic here. Dude, when you're in that level of pain, don't call your fucking GF. Call emergency services. There's nothing to be embarrassed about. Oh, and NTA, but your GF is. They have a strong disconnect in communication styles. If they get married before figuring it out, they're going to blame each other. What is her communication style in this scenario? I don't think there's enough info on how they communicate. My wife absolutely would laugh at me if I said my balls hurt, but would also drop everything if I told her I was serious. If op has never had an emergency in this relationship, especially being so young, it's not unreasonable to assume their GF thought it was a joke. This can be an excellent moment for discussions. Op. She did stay by you and clearly feels awful about her initial reaction. You never need a reason to end a relationship, but if you have a desire to stay, use this as a chance to set up clearer communication. Jokes are well and good, but blocking is too far going forward. That also means when you are joking, you need clarity on what's too far, so blocking isn't required. NTA, sorry someone cast testicular torsion on you. Update, first of all, I just want to thank all of you for the amazing support. It's been quite overwhelming, to be honest. I have so many unread messages, so please, guys, give me some time. I promise I'll respond to all of them. First of all, I would like to clear up some misconceptions brewing in the comment section of my last post. No, I have never pulled any malicious pranks on my girlfriend to get her to come home early from a night out or anything. Neither do I have an issue with her going out, as long as she doesn't come home at like 6 a.m. And no, I've never blown up her phone like that while she was out with friends. We usually go out together since we share the same friend groups. Here are mine and her messages from WhatsApp in order since people thought I just texted her my balls hurt or something. Translated. 1. Me, declined my first 2 calls. Her name, please come home, something is wrong. 2. Her? Can't talk RN. What is it? 3. Me, tried calling her again. I need to go to the hospital. 4. Her? What? 5. Me, again tried calling her twice. My balls hurt. Please come now. Something is wrong. 6. Her. 7. Me, tried calling her again twice after calling emergency services. 8. Her, I swear don't bother me again or I'm blocking you. Let me fucking enjoy my night out. 9. Me, tried calling her again twice and got blocked. At this point, the pain was too bad to try anything with her anymore and I just called an ambulance. 10. Her next message after unblocking me at 2 a.m. My name, why the fuck is there vomit in the living room and where the fuck are you? Why is the front door unlocked if you left somewhere? She then went into a full mental breakdown as she realized I was being serious about going to the hospital. Over 70 messages. Yes, it was stupid of me to expect her to drive me to the hospital since she was drinking, but again, in that type of pain, you don't think clearly. I think I needed her more for moral support and I did it out of pure instinct. Not immediately calling an ambulance was also stupid of me. I was in a lot of pain, but stupidly at the time thought that whatever I was going through would eventually calm down and driving to the hospital would be better than calling an ambulance. Also, in hindsight, me being embarrassed about calling an ambulance over my balls was definitely also really stupid. The amount of mental gymnastics some of you did in my comments to paint me as some sort of dweeb or emotionally needy person for bothering my GF was truly mind-blowing to me. I promise you if my GF was in my position and I ignored her, none of you would be defending me. Now for the update. Thank for all those who wished me a speedy recovery. I'm doing much better now. Not being able to go to work for the next 3 weeks is definitely a bummer. I work for my dad's construction company, and my job requires lifting a lot of heavy weights. I'm also prohibited from having any sex for the next 2 to 3 weeks as well. I might have also developed some trauma due to the pain. I randomly get the same sensation again, and it's driving me nuts. See what I did there? As for me and my GF, it's complicated. As so many of you and my mom told me, 5 years is definitely a long time to be just throwing away without having a proper conversation with her. So I did just that. I told her how hurt I felt by everything. I mentioned the following points: her ignoring my messages and declining my calls. Yes, clubs are loud, but where I'm from there are smoking areas where you can definitely have a conversation over the phone. Blocking me after I tried calling her. Her not checking on me once even though the club she went to is only a 5-minute walk from our apartment. Her being angry about the vomit instead of being concerned. After hearing that, she got defensive and told me that I could have conveyed my situation better and that she genuinely thought I was joking. She was drunk and wasn't thinking clearly. She also told me that it couldn't have been that painful and I was over-exaggerating. I then told her yes, I could have phrased my messages better and I apologized for that, but I then described the pain I was in and told her that I barely had the strength to text her, let alone send her a detailed description of what was happening to me, and definitely couldn't think straight throughout everything. After hearing what I said, she started crying and apologizing for what she did. She told me if she knew how serious it was, we wouldn't have been having this conversation. She then also apologized for her being mad over the vomit. According to her, she was drunk and tired and was just expressing frustration. I then asked her why she thought I was joking and if she was cheating on me because this was seriously out of character for her, hence why I immediately trusted her with this. She started crying harder and she looked like I just slapped her in the face. She told me that she just thought I was being insecure about her being in the club with a bunch of guys and no, she wasn't cheating on me and would never do something like that. We then hugged for a solid 10 minutes after that. The next part was really hard for me, but I told her I need some space to gather my thoughts and told her she needs to stay with her parents for the time being. She immediately started having a mental breakdown and asked if I was breaking up with her. I told her I wasn't sure and needed time to see if I still trusted her after all of this, and what she did was beyond disrespectful. How could I trust someone with my life after they pulled something like this? I then told her that we are young and this mess was mostly caused by our immaturity. This entire situation was an important life lesson for the both of us regardless if we stayed together. After begging a bit more, she then put her head down and started packing a few essentials. Before leaving, she told she would be willing to do anything to make up for this and that I could take as much time as I needed. She then gave me a big kiss and left. That was 2 days ago and this is where we currently stand. I still give her updates on my healing, but besides that we don't contact each other. I'm really torn right now. I still don't have that trust in her, but her owning up to her mistake shows that she knows she fucked up and is remorseful. This is definitely something out of the ordinary for her, but there will have to be major boundaries and new rules set. I can think of the following. 1. If she blocks me again for anything equals blocking herself from ever seeing me again. 2. Ignoring my messages will not be tolerated anymore. 3. If she goes out alone again, she has to pick up if I call regardless of the situation. 4. As many of you suggested, having an emergency code like hospital or something would probably have to be implemented. I'm not going to abuse any of these boundaries, but I just want peace of mind knowing that my partner has my best interest at heart even when she is physically not around me. Again, I just want to thank you guys for everything, and this whole experience was definitely an eye-opener for me. Should I get back together with her? If yes, would my demands be reasonable and could I add something more? Wibta if I dumped her over this whole saga? Comments, Gilio_NH, time in doesn't mean you need to stay with someone. That just delays the ending of it if you think you can't get past not trusting her. You would not be an asshole if you chose to end it. You would also not be one if you decided to give it a go. You need to go with your gut. I personally would have a hard time getting past someone blocking me when we are in a relationship. That level of petty would be too much for me. To me, that does not imply a partnership, and I need a partnership with my significant other. This October will be my 30th anniversary of being married. If he blocked me or did not pick up when I made multiple calls, that would be a trust broken, and I'm not sure I would be able to get past that. Fat Bink Rose, when I woke up my partner in the middle of the night for him. It was 9 a.m. but he got off work at 5 a.m. In pain so bad all I could communicate was something is wrong. He dropped everything to help me. He drove me to the hospital, called my parents for me, explained what had been going on to the doctors, advocated for me to get pain meds, and stayed with me the entire time. That's what a caring partner should do. If a partner doesn't help, okay, maybe they can't. If my partner even called me twice in a row, I'd drop everything to answer or call back. If for some reason I can't, I'll text him. Your partner is a million red flags disguised as human, I think. Wide_comment 3081, but also, I would never be able to recover from this if this happened to me. You were having a medical emergency and she's still trying to blame you for not communicating clearly. Now on to the next story. Story 2. Discovered that my long-distance girlfriend of a year was married the whole time. So, I met with her husband, exposed the affair, and got revenge. About a year ago, I, 29 male, met a woman, 31 female, at a conference in Baltimore. I was only there for work and I wasn't expecting our night together to evolve into anything else. But we hit it off, and after hooking up for the first time during the conference, we exchanged numbers and we kept in touch. We lived about an hour away from each other, so it wasn't far enough to completely rule out a long-distance relationship. We didn't get to see each other often, but we would text and chat when we were both available. About once or twice a month she would visit me in the city and we would go out together. I loved seeing her. We had a wonderful connection and I really felt like our relationship could go somewhere. However, in hindsight, I realized that I was putting more into the relationship than she was. I didn't think anything about our relationship until I was talking to a friend about us. I explained to her how my girlfriend would visit me, but I almost never visited her. Just to clarify, it wasn't for lack of trying. I had been vocal about wanting to travel to her apartment and meet her friends. My friend was a little weirded out by that. She said that it was odd that my girlfriend didn't want me to visit her. But at the same time, my friend is the type of person who listens to a lot of true crime and watches too much TV. We both kind of laughed it off like she was assuming there was something more going on. But our conversation did get me thinking. I thought I knew my girlfriend from the conversations we had, but it was all surface level. I knew what TV shows and books she liked, but I didn't know anything about her family. The next time I talked to her on the phone, I asked her more about herself. I wasn't asking in a way to accuse her of anything, but I genuinely wanted to learn more about her because I saw a future with her. She just told me that there wasn't much to talk about. She gave me a short story about being an only child and her parents having passed away. It made sense that if she didn't have any family around, she wouldn't bring it up. So, I moved on. Months passed in our relationship and she still didn't want me to come visit her. It was difficult for me because I really wanted to meet her friends. By that point, she had met a few of mine and they really liked her. I wanted to see the city she lived in because I was considering suggesting that we move in together. No matter how many times I asked, she always shut down the idea of me visiting. I didn't think much about it at the time, but all of our conversations were very sexual. Whenever we would be together, we would go to dinner or bar, then we would go right back to my apartment and sleep together. I kind of just thought that it was because we were apart for so long, but after a while, the lack of depth with our conversations was getting to me. I was talking to another friend about her, just venting some of my frustrations, and he mentioned that I might be a side piece. I was very shocked to hear that and honestly kind of hurt. At the time I felt like I had something special with her, and hearing that it might have been less than I thought was awful. He pointed out all of the facts and told me that if she's being very secretive about her life, it probably means that there's something she doesn't want me to know. That thing might have been that she had a partner, possibly family. I couldn't believe that. There was no chance in hell that was the case. I actually got kind of mad at my friend for even suggesting that, so I went home and I stewed on it for a while. When my anger subsided, I started to see some merit to the point he was making. I went online to read other stories about people who were unknowingly sleeping with committed people, and a lot of my circumstances aligned. I had asked my girlfriend early on in the relationship for her social media so we could add each other, but she just told me she didn't have any. She then proceeded to tell me all about how vile she thought it was, so I believed her. However, after looking online for her, I found her profiles. She had lied about having social media so she wouldn't have to add me to them. When I clicked on the Facebook link from Google, I realized that I was blocked. She was definitely trying to hide something from me. I made a fake account and I searched for her again just so I could see for myself what she was hiding. Just from the public view of her profile, I could see that she was married and seemed to be happy from the looks of it. There was a young child in a few of the photos. I didn't know if it was hers or what. I found her husband's name through her profile and I started looking at his. From what I could gather, they have been together since high school. I had my suspicions something was going on and I finally had an answer. Honestly, I kind of regretted looking into it. Before that, I had a great relationship with someone that I didn't feel guilty about. After looking at it, I couldn't help but feel like I was a bad person. I knew that I didn't know about her family, but I was still sleeping with her. Right away I knew that I was going to end everything with her. But it didn't feel right to let her get away with cheating. I needed to think of some way to tell her husband and also teach her a lesson about what she did. Through looking at his social media, I could tell that he was a realtor. I reached out to him and I set up a meeting to have a conversation with him. I said I was interested in buying a house, but of course, that was a lie. I made sure our meeting was going to be during a time when my girlfriend wasn't in the house because I didn't want her to find out about it. When the time for the meeting came, we spent a few minutes chatting with each other while I tried to decide if I actually had the nerve to tell him everything. I didn't know if that would be the end for them. I hoped that it would be because she had betrayed their marriage by being with me. After a few minutes, I confessed that I wasn't there to buy a house. I told him about how I met his wife and about the affair that ensued after, making sure he knew that I knew nothing about him and his family. He was as shocked as I was about the news. He told me something else that shocked me too. Apparently, she had been working weekends every week. She told him that it was only temporary while she was onboarding and training some new managers for work. After I told him about our relationship, he insinuated she was visiting me every weekend. But that wasn't the case. I honestly had to wonder if there was another person she was having an affair with. I only saw her once or twice a month. I sent him a bunch of screenshots and videos from our chats. I felt horrible when he was reading them in front of me. He told me that he was going to figure out what to do with them and he thanked me for being honest with him. I spent the rest of the day feeling sick to my stomach after the conversation. I genuinely believed that she had another person that she was sleeping with. 2 days later, she called me and was immediately irate. Apparently, I had no business digging around in her life after she had made it clear she didn't want me to. I ruined her marriage and I was the worst thing that ever happened to her. I was shocked that she was blaming me for what happened. It was her choice to lie to her husband and have an affair. If I would have known that she was married, I would have never pursued her. Honestly, the fact that she wasn't even wearing her ring during the conference said enough. After I got off the phone with her, I haven't heard from her since. Her husband, on the other hand, did end up divorcing her and he told me that she's living with her mom until she finds a new place. I couldn't help but laugh hearing that because it made me think about how she told me her parents were dead. I'm honestly just really glad I'm past this part of my life. I'm hoping I can meet someone who is truly single and be happy. Husband's toxic parents kicked my sil out for not getting into their preferred college. We took her in and discovered they were covering up her affair with a friend who got her hooked on PLLS. My husband, 25M, and I, 25F, have been married for the past 2 years. We have been together for almost 5 years, since the first year of college, when we first met. He and I knew almost instantly that we were going to be together forever because that's how strong our connection was, even on the first date. Our relationship has been pretty smooth. The only problem that we have ever had was with his parents. I'm gonna be blunt and just say it, his parents are literally the worst. His parents are as toxic and horrible as it gets, and we have not been in touch with them for the past 2 years, right after we got married, because of an incident that happened around the time of the wedding. They are not the kind of people that anybody would want to be associated with, and I think pretty much everyone who knows them and is still in their life, must be there for the money because they are filthy rich. My father-in-law is a surgeon and my mother-in-law is a dentist. Both of them are pretty well. Great at being parents? Not so much. I had known all along that my husband did not really have a good relationship with his parents because of the way that they had treated both their kids. Even before I had met them, my husband had warned me that they were extremely judgmental and didn't mince their words. They say exactly what they think, even if it might hurt the other person. They literally do not care about anybody's feelings, and just say whatever they want to, regardless of whether it's politically correct to say or not. A couple of his girlfriends had to break up with him because they could not handle the way his parents would behave around them. They would make unnecessary remarks about their appearances, ask them what their parents did, and then make a mockery out of it. And I don't think any self-respecting individual would ever let somebody else's parents talk crap about their own parents and let them get away with it. So obviously, he had a lot of breaks before he finally got together with me. He had warned me about all of this and I had made up my mind that no matter what, I was not going to let anything affect my relationship with him. I loved him and I was going to make this relationship work, no matter what. So his parents had a lot of things to say about me, but I already knew what kind of people they were, so I did not let it get to me. Instead, I dealt with everything very graciously and just smiled through the entire ordeal. They picked on everything about me, right from the color of my hair to my parents' profession. My dad is a real estate agent and my mom is a stay-at-home mom, and I am an only child. So they had a lot of things to say about how they do not encourage stupid things like this in their family, and they believe that as long as somebody can work, they should be working. They told me that unlike my mother, who they implied was pretty lazy for quitting her job and staying at home just to take care of one child, it would have still made sense. If at least I had a sibling. Anyway, they told me that I should not have any idea about quitting my job and staying at home, depending on their son for everything. Because they were not going to allow it and they would make sure that they got us divorced if I ever got any ideas like that. Mind you, this was our first meeting and they were not even pretending to joke about it. They said all of this to me with a straight face and I felt weird about it, but I already knew that this was how they were. I did not engage and I just said that I would keep that in mind and smiled. I'm sure a lot of you might be wondering why I even had to put up with any of this and why my husband couldn't just stand up to his parents. To be honest, we also think we should have just cut ties with them at that very moment, but unfortunately, we were in college at the time. And my husband did not have any other way to pay for his tuition from his parents. So as long as he was dependent on them for money, he had to put up with them. And I did not want him to get in trouble, so I did it for him. Honestly, I don't have any regrets about it because I know that I did it for my husband, and had it not been for him, I probably would have just torn into them and let them have it. And I did that anyway, a couple of years later, but I let them know exactly, but I thought of them. So no, I don't regret not standing up to them earlier since I was doing it for my husband and it was important for us. That being said, throughout our years of college, I only met them a couple of times. Thankfully, I would spend the holidays with my family and we would only have to meet his family on his birthdays and maybe I would visit them once at some other time, with my husband, so it would just be once or twice a year. None of these meetings were particularly memorable or even good, so I tried my best to forget about them because they were just really rude to me every time. I don't remember the things that they said, but I just remember them picking on me a lot and trying to make me feel bad about myself. I don't know what it was, maybe it was their idea of testing me or something equally screwed up, but I just remember feeling very annoyed whenever I was around them. Every time we would get back from visiting his parents, he and I would discuss how frustrating it was, and he would console me, telling me that he would make sure that he talked to his parents about their behavior after he had graduated so they did not cut off his funds in the middle of the process. We could not risk it, so we just decided to keep our mouths shut until we had graduated, and then after that, we would deal with his parents. But until then, we had to accept that this is how they were because he was dependent on them financially, and it would be too much hassle to apply for a student loan or try to work through college. We are ready to admit it, we decided to take the easy way out at the time and people might not like it, but it was the most practical way to deal with it. Anyway, we continued to be together, and things are going pretty well for us since we did not have to meet with his parents often. Shortly, after we graduated, he decided to propose to me, and I accepted because we had already been together for a really long time, and it was just the perfect opportunity for us to get married and spend the rest of our lives together. I was sure of him, and he was sure of me. We didn't exactly need our parents' approval because anyway, I knew that my parents loved him and he had a great relationship with my parents. He did not bother to ask his parents if they were okay with him getting married so young because he knew that they would not approve of it and try to talk about it, and he did not need that. I guess you could say that they were the opposite of conservative, they were literally aggressively liberal. And they did not think that people should get married young or have kids young because of their personal beliefs, but my husband and I have known each other for a really long time and I don't think I would ever want to be with anybody else. I can't even imagine myself with anybody else. I am certain that it's the same way for him. So we were sure about each other, but he knew that if he tried to tell his parents that he was getting married before he had even turned 25, they would lose their heads over it and it would be a mess. So he didn't tell them about the engagement and informed them only after 3 months had already passed and they couldn't exactly change his mind after that. When we told them that we were engaged, they did not seem happy about it, but there was nothing that they could do so they had to just accept it. For the next couple of months, while we were preparing and gearing up for the wedding, they did not try to talk to us or engage with us in any way. Had they been better to my husband, he might have been upset about it, but he did not seem to care about it one bit. And we were actually glad that they were staying out of the way because we did not want them interrupting our happiness. His sister was the only person from his family who seemed to actually be bothered with the wedding and was very helpful throughout the process. Even before, when I had met her a couple of times, while I was visiting my husband's family, she had always been nice to me, and I think she was the only person from his family that I actually got along with. I don't know how such awful parents were able to raise such nice kids, but I guess that 2 of them just saw their parents, and they decided that they were never going to turn out like them. Even though they had never bothered to properly congratulate us or even attend our engagement party, we had thrown it only after we had told them about our engagement. Out of respect for them, we still invited them to the wedding as a formality. Whether they wanted to attend or not, that was completely up to them. We did not expect them to RSVP to it, but surprisingly, they accepted the invitation. It was kind of weird because they had not spoken to us after we had announced our engagement and told them about it, and they had very clearly been unhappy about it but hadn't said anything. After that, they did not exactly bother to keep in touch, and we did not think that they would attend the wedding either since they had made it so obvious that they were not happy with our decision. I guess we should have realized that there was something fishy about their decision to attend the wedding, but we got too busy with everything else to even care about that. Anyway, on the day of the ceremony, we got married and everything went smoothly, but his parents did not show up until after everything was over. We did find it a little strange since he had agreed to attend the wedding, but then they did not show up. They showed up much later, after almost everybody had left, and it was just us and a couple of our close family members. Basically just my parents, and some people from my family, since his relatives had left for the most part. We were having a fun time and just chatting while sitting around, which is when his parents showed up. They had not even bothered to dress up and turned up in their casual clothes, so we were pretty surprised when we saw that. Then they had the audacity to walk up to us and ask us if everything was over already, as if it was completely normal for them to arrive hours later than the time that we had mentioned and expect everything to be put on hold for them. My husband got really annoyed because this was supposed to be a happy day for us and he did not want them ruining it for him. So I decided to deal with it, and I was someone who told them that they were a little too late and everything was already done. So now they could either have dinner and leave, or they could leave without it as well. We were okay with both the options. And that got them really riled up, just as I had expected, and they started hurling accusations at me. They accused me of being a gold digger, just like my mother, and said that my plan was to create a rift between my husband and them, so they would not have any access to him anymore, and I would poison him against them, so I could have them all to myself, and then I would leave the rest of my life off of his money. It was so far-fetched and stupid that I couldn't even take them seriously. I literally started laughing in their face, and they told my husband that he had to file for divorce immediately, or they would cut him off. But my husband had graduated, he was no longer dependent on them for money, and we had our own jobs. So he stood his ground, and he told them that he did not need them anymore and they had always been extremely toxic, so they could just leave and it would not affect us in any way whatsoever. So they left, and we did not speak to them after that for almost 2 years. Up until a week ago, we had no contact with them, and unfortunately, we had to cut ties with his sister as well. Or to put it more accurately, she had to cut ties with us because she was still depending on them, and even though my husband made a decent amount of money, it was too early to be able to support her at the time, and she needed her parents. No matter how terrible they were. So she chose them over us, and honestly, we understand why she did that. Her hands were tied, and I knew that if she had an option, she would have picked us in a heartbeat. And she did. A couple of weeks ago, she showed up at our house and said that she needed a place to stay because she had been kicked out. She was in tears, and the second that I saw her at the outdoor stuff, I took her in because there was no way I was turning her away, no matter what had happened between us and her parents. Once she was inside the house, she told us that the reason she had been kicked out was because she had not been accepted into the college of her parents' choice, and they were very upset about it, so they kicked her out to teach her a lesson. The rejection had come a couple of days before she got kicked out, and they felt like she was not sad enough about it. They got into a big fight because of that, which was just so ridiculous, and they ended up telling her that she was not welcome to stay in their house anymore. Not until she started acting like she actually regretted not studying hard enough, even though she was one of the best students in her school, and it was just bad luck. We decided to take her in, no questions asked, and to help her deal with her emotions. We had not saved up enough money to be able to pay for her tuition, but we told her that we would support her in whatever decision she made. Even if she wanted to take a gap year and find herself, we would be okay with it, and we would want to support her. Or if she actually wanted to go to college, we would help her take out a student loan, and then she could do whatever she wanted to, without having her parents interfere. So she has been living with us for the past few weeks, ever since her parents kicked her out, and even though we are trying our best to be there for her, we have to go to work every day and we can only spend the evenings at home. The evenings and the weekends are the only time we get with her, and even then, she seems really morose and sad. She refuses to speak to anybody and stays in her room the entire day. I think she's depressed, but she keeps telling us that she'll be fine in a few days and she just needs some time to get over this. We have even offered to take her to therapy, but she insists that she's fine and does not need anybody's help right now. She just wants to figure out what to do with her life because she had assumed that her parents would help her out, no matter what, just like my husband. But unfortunately, for her, she did not get into the college that they wanted her to attend, unlike my husband, and now she had no idea what to do with her life. She hasn't even accepted any of the other spots that have been offered to her other colleges, so we are also getting a little bit worried because if she doesn't respond soon enough, she might not be able to go to college this year. It's just a huge mess right now, and we don't know what to do about it because, at the end of the day, we are not her parents. We are not even old enough to be her parents. The age gap between the two of us is really not that huge. So we can be there for her as friends, but the guidance and mentorship that she needs right now, we can't offer her that, and she doesn't want to take it from anybody else right now. Anyway, a couple of days ago, I was going through the kitchen cabinets and looking for something, but I found a bottle of pills in the cabinet. I was taking a bag because it's not like my husband and I required any sort of serious medication right now. We don't really need it, and the ones we do, we keep them in the medicine cabinet under the sink. So I took those out and realized that these were antidepressants, which was sort of an alarm in my head because she was refusing to get professional help, yet, she had a bottle of antidepressants lying around in the house. That did not seem right. She was not at home at the time, she was out to buy herself some snacks, and I had a day off from work, which is why I was at home. I called my husband up immediately and told him about what I had found, and he told me to wait at home. He was coming back to deal with this. Both of us were pretty surprised because there was no way she could get her hands on those pills without a prescription, and if she was doing something illegal, we wanted to know just so we could keep her safe. Both of them came back home around the same time and we confronted her about what we had found, and she broke down instantly. She told me that she had kept it there on purpose because she actually wanted to find it, and questioned her about it. She told me that she was in touch with one of my father-in-law's business associates and he was the one hooking her up with those pills. This business associate was in his late 20s and they had started a relationship at the beginning of this year, just as soon as she had turned 18. He was almost 29 and she was 18. You can tell that it's pretty strange. It's legal, but that does not make it any less weird on a social level. And the fact that he was a business associate of her father made it all the more. They had met at a work party and he had started hitting her and her almost immediately, and she, being young and vulnerable, actually started feeling for him. But 3 months into their secret relationship, she found out that he had been cheating on her and he begged her for forgiveness, and she decided to forgive him, but it kept happening again and again. At some point, a couple of weeks ago, her parents found out about it accidentally while going through her laptop because they had noticed the way she was behaving, and that was actually another reason why they had kicked her out. The fact that she had been hooking up with this guy, combined with the fact that she did not get accepted into the college that they wanted her to go to, was what led them to take such a harsh step against her, and she was really depressed about it. She confessed that she had been feeling this way for a couple of months now and her boyfriend had been hooking her up with those pills. She said that she had a problem and that she wanted us to help her because she was ashamed of admitting to all of this, and she felt like a total idiot. I felt bad for her, obviously, but more than anything else, my husband and I were furious that his parents had treated her this way. She was obviously in trouble and needed to protect her if something bad had happened to her. The almost 30-year-old business associates should have known better than he did, and they should have been there for her, trying to hush it all up and protect their own reputation. The three of us talked about it and we decided that the best thing to do right now would be to expose everything that they were up to. Because my sister-in-law might have been an addict, but the business associate who was hooking her up with those pills was equally at fault, if not more. As a matter of fact, in my opinion, he was the only person at fault. Her parents had known about this yet, they did not do anything about it. Because then, they would have to talk about how they had found out, and they did not want to do that because they wanted to protect their own reputation. So we put the story out on social media and then, crap hit the fan. As soon as that story got out, everybody was suspended. My in-laws and the guy who had been handing those pills to my sister-in-law. And then the hospital authorities where they work started the investigation against everybody who was involved, which is still ongoing, and everybody from my husband's family contacted us to tell us that what we did was out of line. They believed that we could have resolved it by talking to them, but instead of doing that, we decided to jump to an extreme level and get them into the kind of trouble that they would never be able to bounce back from. They think we were quite unfair. Honestly, it has us second-guessing our decision. Because the kind of flack that we are receiving for this is unprecedented. So I really need to know, Ida, for putting out the story of why my in-laws had kicked my sister-in-law out of their house? Update 1. So, I'm really sorry, but I was not able to post any updates about this for the past month because everything was so stressful. My sister-in-law decided that she was not going to join college this year, she was going to rehab instead and trying to get herself sorted out because she really had an addiction and we hadn't even noticed it, she was so good at hiding it. She was a high-functioning addict and it was so dangerous. I am really happy that she put that bottle there that day, and we found out. Because otherwise, God only knows what might have happened. The matter is still under investigation and it has gone to court now. There is a very real chance that all of them might lose their license and I really think that they deserve it. My in-laws might lose it for a short time, but even then, I think it's necessary. My husband's family has cut all ties with us and honestly, we don't feel too bad about it. Because even after hearing about how my in-laws have been treating him and his sister, they don't seem to care about that. All they care about is that we were too hard on them. They don't even give a crap about how they have also always been too hard on their own kids. They were the worst of the worst, and like I had said in my original post, they were the most toxic people I have ever come across in my entire life. My parents have been very helpful and I'm really glad about it because I don't think we have been able to deal with this as successfully as we have, without their help. We don't speak to anybody from his family, so we don't really have a lot of updates on what is going on with the court case. We only get bits and pieces of information from their neighbors or other people who know them, family, friends, and acquaintances. But obviously, they will not know everything like his relatives would. However, since they are not speaking to us, we have to make do with this. We have not visited them or spoken to his parents ever since we posted online, and I think it's better for us to keep it like that. Update 2. It has happened that all three of them lost their license, according to the court. My in-laws are not going to be able to practice for the next 3 years and the guy who had been supplying my sister-in-law with those pills is going to prison for a while. I don't know the exact details, maybe that will come out later, but at least I know that justice has been served. My sister-in-law is in rehab right now. I'll be able to pay her a visit to tell her about this in a couple of days. We have been in touch with her and she's doing well, We have heard that she is making progress and we could not be happier about it. I think I'm gonna try and get her a job in my company since I'm planning to quit my current job and start something of my own. I bet his parents would be very happy to know that I am actually starting my own business because they had just assumed that I would want to be a stay-at-home wife, just because my mother had chosen that route for herself. I wish I could just contact them and let them know how great life has been without them and how they are only reaping the fruits of the seeds that they had sown. I want to tell them that they deserve this because ultimately, pride comes before the fall. And their downfall has been spectacular. I would really want to meet them now since they have nothing to be so arrogant and cocky about anymore. My husband doesn't seem to care, but I still remember all the ways that he had insulted me and my parents back when I was still dating my husband. Well, how the mighty have fallen. Update 3, hey guys, so it has been 6 months since my last update. I have already started my new business and guess what, the vultures have started circling us already. Things are going pretty well for me, career-wise, and everyone wants a piece of this now. So his parents actually reached out to him and asked him if we would be open to the idea of letting them come on board as investors in my business. Since now, they don't have any source of income of their own, they have to rely on their savings. And they don't blow through all of it in the next 5 years, so they can either live frugally or find an alternative. The audacity to even think that I would have any sort of business dealings with everything that they have put my family through, that's just insane. We blocked the numbers that they had contacted us from and told them never to contact us again or we would get a restraining order against him because we wanted nothing to do with them. Anyway, after that they had the good sense not to bother us again and we are really happy about it. My sister-in-law is doing much better now and she is living with us, so we can take care of her and keep an eye on her. She's working in my company and she's really good at her job, so we might turn it into a permanent position if she decides not to go back to college. But I would still suggest that she go, even though she's not interested anymore. Anyway, things are falling into place and we are happy.